She still made me coffee every morning, kissed my cheek, called me genius. And I believed her. She still made it exactly the way I liked it: 2 sugars, oat milk, a dusting of cinnamon. The cup always waiting by the window before I even came down the stairs. Like clockwork. Like love. I used to think that's what love was. The repetition. The reliability. The ease. We had a rhythm: coffee in the morning, crosswords shared in silence, and half-muttered plans for the business we were building. I'd sketch projections on napkins while she scrolled through property listings or sent sleek, vague emails from her tablet. I thought we were building something permanent. But sometimes silence hides more than peace. Lately, her phone seemed to need her more than I did. Her fingers floated over the screen like they were rehearsing a dance I wasn't invited to watch. She'd smile into it. Softly. Secretly. And then she asked about offshore accounts. Just like that. A sip of espresso, a glance at the headlines, and then, "What do you think about moving some of our money abroad? You know, just in case." Just in case of what? She didn't blink. Didn't elaborate. Just smiled and kissed my cheek. Called me genius, like always. And I nodded. Because the truth is, it's easier to believe in the story you've already told yourself, the one where she loves you, where the marriage is still whole, where the shadows in the corner of your mind are just tricks of the light. But even shadows have weight if you watch them long enough. It started small. Her perfume lingered longer than her presence. She laughed more at things I couldn't hear. Her notifications came at odd hours. She began double-knotting her phone charger like it was a secret. I used to think betrayal would shatter everything at once. I pictured it like glass breaking, dramatic, unmistakable. But it turns out betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it seeps. Quiet as steam. Invisible until it scalds. And still, every morning she made me coffee. Kissed my cheek. Called me genius. And I believed her. Because believing her was easier than asking the question I already knew the answer to. The books were cleaner than ever, too clean. I should have been relieved. Everything balanced. Every line in the ledger double-checked. Spreadsheets I hadn't opened in months were now color-coded, categorized, and reviewed down to the last decimal. It looked pristine. Too pristine. Like someone staging a crime scene just before the police arrive. I told myself I was imagining things. That it was the stress talking. That my own exhaustion was turning competence into conspiracy. But then I found the reconciliations. They were tucked in the wire logs, small shifts, really. Edits so minor they could have passed for clerical corrections. A vendor refunded here, a retainer reapplied there. It all added up. But to what? She laughed when I asked about it. A melodic, effortless laugh, like the question itself was endearing. "Oh, you know how tax season gets," she said, stirring her coffee with slow, elegant circles. "Just tidying up before the auditors do." And I nodded. Because that's what you do when the person you love smiles while lying. She'd always been the organized one. I was the idea guy. She was the one who kept us grounded, made sure we dotted the I's, signed the right forms, sent the thank you notes. It never occurred to me that the system she was refining was a vault she was locking, not to protect what we had, but to control what she could take. She wasn't cleaning up for us. She was preparing her escape. But I didn't see it then. Not fully. Just hints. Shadows at the edge of the page. Like how she stopped looping me into new proposals. How she started phrasing things differently, the company instead of our company. And how she stopped asking me to review the quarterly reports. At the time, I told myself it was trust. She was streamlining. Helping. But help doesn't usually come with passwords changed and backup drives mysteriously missing. Still, she kissed me every morning. Still called me genius. And every time she handed me a perfect spreadsheet, I smiled back like I didn't feel the floor shifting under my feet. It's strange how betrayal can wear a tailored suit. Carry a clipboard. Smile sweetly while reallocating your future. I didn't know it then, but she wasn't untangling the books to help me sleep better. She was untangling herself from me. Friday, 42 employees. Monday, 0. It didn't make sense at first. The key still worked. The lobby lights still flickered on. My name was still etched in gold on the glass door. But the office itself, it felt hollow. Like someone had vacuumed the air out overnight. No sound. No chatter. No phones ringing. No footsteps. Just silence. The kind that sinks into your teeth. I walked past the empty reception desk, down the hallway where desks sat like bones. Coffee mugs still on coasters. Chairs still tucked in, like they'd been summoned away mid-laugh, mid-keystroke. It wasn't just absence. It was abandonment. I called Marcus, our CTO. His number disconnected. Then Jenna, my assistant for 5 years. Straight to voicemail. I stood there, in the center of an office we'd built from scratch, watching the cursor blink on the login screen of my own computer like it was mocking me. When I finally got in, only one message sat in my inbox. Subject: final balance. From accounts at *. No body text, just an attachment. I opened it expecting some system error, a glitch in payroll or billing. But the number stared back, cold and certain, $0. 42 employees. Gone. No notice. No goodbye. No paper trail. It wasn't theft. It was something worse. It was premeditated. I sat in my office chair, the one she picked out, ergonomic and sleek, and stared at the blank wall across from me. My reflection shimmered in the dark glass of the TV monitor. I looked like someone else, someone who hadn't seen it coming. But maybe I had. There were signs. Of course there were signs. The sudden audit request. The outsourced payroll firm she insisted on. The week she told me to take time off, said I was burning out. That she'd handle things. She didn't just empty the office. She extracted herself from it. Clean. Precise. This wasn't just a betrayal of love. This was a betrayal of legacy. It was supposed to be ours. The company, the vision, the late nights dreaming together with empty pizza boxes and scribbled plans. I thought we were co-architects. Turns out I was just an investor, and the return was zero. I'm just helping with payroll, she said once. I kissed her hand. It was a rainy Tuesday, I think. She wore that slate gray sweater, the one with the little thread pull near the cuff, and her hair was tied up like it always was when she meant business. She came into my office holding 2 mugs and a question. Would it be all right if I helped out with payroll? Just for a while, she said, setting the coffee beside me like it was a peace offering. I want to understand the system better. You've been carrying so much. I remember laughing, grateful. I kissed her hand. I thought that was love, handing off the burden, sharing the weight. I didn't realize I'd handed her the keys. At the time, it felt like progress, like trust. She took on passwords, approvals, wire instructions, said it would be good for us. And I agreed because I saw her as a partner, not a threat, because I was proud of her. Now I see the brilliance in her timing. She started small, confirming vendor rates, reviewing expense requests. Then she began initiating wires. Eventually, I stopped checking the ledger entirely. I'd ask how things looked and she'd smile and say, on track. Then she'd change the subject, usually with a kiss or a plan for the weekend. It was beautiful, really. The precision, the choreography. The lie didn't break anything. It bent things until they looked normal. I never saw it as manipulation. I saw it as love maturing, becoming efficient, seamless. Turns out, it was a magician's trick. Misdirect the heart while the hands disappear with everything else. And it worked, because I trusted her more than I trusted my own instincts. Because when someone says they're doing it for you, you don't think to ask why now. Or what do they need this power for? You just kiss their hand and thank them. And when the house collapses, you wonder why you didn't notice the match in their pocket. The camera didn't catch a thief. Caught an affair. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that reviewing the security footage was about the missing funds, the empty office, the vanishing staff. But the truth is, I was looking for her. Or maybe I was hoping not to find her. The system hadn't been touched. Nothing deleted, nothing wiped. She was too smart for that. She didn't hide her tracks. She just didn't think I'd look. I scrubbed through the footage in a haze. Desk chairs rolling, empty coffee machines, forgotten meetings. Ghosts of a company that used to breathe. Then came Thursday, 2:12 p.m. There they were. My wife, my business partner, in my office. He leaned back in my chair like it was his. She sat on the edge of my desk, the desk I built from reclaimed walnut with her initials carved into the underside. She laughed at something he whispered. Then she kissed him. Not a shy, guilty kiss. Not a mistake. It was the kind of kiss people share when they believe the world belongs to them. His hand slid across her hip like it had always belonged there. Her fingers tugged the collar of his shirt. Her eyes never flinched. And on his wrist, my watch. The Rolex she gifted me for our 3rd year in business. The one I hadn't worn in months. The one I thought I'd misplaced. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember stopping the footage. I just remember sitting there, in the dark, watching them take everything. It wasn't embezzlement. It wasn't infidelity. It was a hijacking. I handed them the controls. Gave them the passcodes, the payroll, the keys to the vault. Told myself it was love. Told myself we were building something together. But they weren't building. They were boarding. And somewhere along the flight, I stopped being the pilot. I became cargo. I wasn't just robbed. I was profiled. I always thought betrayal was about opportunity. An unlocked safe. A misstep. A moment of weakness. But I see it differently now. It's not a crime of chance. It's a study. A long, patient excavation of someone's soul. They didn't just take my company. They studied me. They knew I needed to trust. That I prized loyalty over logic. That I treated partnerships like family and promises like scripture. They didn't outsmart me, they understood me. That's what stings. There were no passwords left. No clues. Not even a paper trail to chase. They were too careful for that. What they left behind was something else. Recordings. Board meetings. Retreats. Even casual brainstorming lunches we used to hold around the big white table with the crooked leg she always leaned against. The audio captured everything. And in every single one, I heard myself say it like a mantra. We're family here. I said it with pride. With warmth. With conviction. And I imagine, somewhere just outside the frame, they were grinning. Maybe even exchanging glances. Maybe that line, that one stupid, earnest line, was the exact moment they knew they could do it. I laughed when I heard it again today. Not because it was funny, but because I finally understood the punchline. It wasn't about greed. It wasn't about money. It was about me. They knew I wouldn't suspect her, not her. They knew I'd keep saying thank you even as she wired our future away. They knew I believed in second chances. In good intentions. In love that lasts. I wasn't just a target. I was a profile. They didn't just rob me. They read me. And they wrote the ending while I was still writing the next chapter. Interpol flagged the account. But it was already ash. I used to believe money left footprints. That no matter how clever someone was, no matter how many accounts they bounced through, the numbers would betray them in the end. But this wasn't a theft. It was a disappearance. The trail led to Switzerland. Geneva. An account I didn't even know we had access to because we didn't. Not directly. It was set up under a name that didn't exist, owned by a company that only lived inside 2 office drawers and a single forgotten laptop. The paper trail was air. A jet was chartered a week before the collapse, same day I gave a speech about sustainability and long-term vision. I remember she smiled at me from the front row. That jet never landed under a name I recognized. But it landed. The account once held $93 million. My entire liquidity portfolio. Every reinvested dollar, every equity exit, every long game we played together. Gone. The man from Interpol, stiff suit, sharp vowels, tapped the monitor with a gloved finger. They're ghosts, he said. I said nothing. What was there to say? It was all done. It had been done before I even knew to look. Like a fire already burned to dust while I was still holding the match, wondering if I should light it. I went home that night and opened a bottle I'd been saving for our 10th anniversary. Sat in the dark. Poured a glass. Didn't drink it. I just watched the way the light caught the rim. How beautiful something can be right before it's gone. That's when it happened. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Something quieter. Sharper. Something crystallized. I'd been naive. She knew how I thought. How I moved. How I trusted. She used it all. Every weakness wasn't just exposed, it was mapped, like topography, like strategy. But strategy works both ways. If she was going to vanish, I'd become the storm on her horizon. No threats. No drama. No shouting. Just silence. And a slow, methodical response. I wasn't going to chase her. I was going to track her. Because ghosts leave echoes. And I've started listening. I built the empire. She built the exit. The safe had always been my insurance against chaos. Cash reserves. Contracts with real ink. Hard drives with our earliest pitches, old photos, backups of everything we'd built, the evidence of our rise, locked behind steel and 6 digits. Now it held a single envelope. No backup files. No cash. Just white paper and her handwriting, that elegant slant I used to find charming on birthday cards. I knew it was her before I touched it. Something about the way it was centered. Deliberate. Waiting. I sat down before I opened it. Funny how instinct tells you when something will hurt before you even read the words. Inside, one sentence. You built an empire. I built my escape. No apology. No explanation. Just symmetry. It wasn't a confession. It was a victory lap. For a moment I waited for the sting. For the familiar rush of nausea, of heartbreak, of loss. But it didn't come. Because it finally made sense. Everything. The long nights she worked late. The business decisions she pushed me to sign off on. The sudden interest in digital assets. The shell companies. The tax season shuffle. Geneva. The silence. This letter wasn't an end. It was her signature on the blueprint she'd been sketching in the margins of my life for years. And strangely, I didn't feel hollow reading it. I felt focused. Because I hadn't just lost a wife. I'd lost a partner in the most literal sense. Someone who held half the keys and used them to open a door I never saw coming. But now I knew which door. And now I knew which way to walk. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and returned it to the safe. Not out of sentiment, but as a marker. A reminder. This wasn't the end of the story. This was the point in the plot when the victim gets off the floor. Revenge is for amateurs. This would be something else. I didn't want justice. Not the kind you file for. Not the kind you plead for in courtrooms where suits pretend to understand the gravity of what was taken. This wasn't about lawyers. So I started making calls. Not to old friends. To older contacts. Quiet ones. The kind of people who never ask why. Just when. People with long memories and no business cards. Ghosts who had once owed me favors and still remembered the exact shape of my silence. While she vanished into her new name and clean account history, I started watching. Her aliases weren't creative, just efficient. I traced them like footprints in fresh snow. Email domains spun up and shut down, travel under initials, a charity formed in Lisbon. She'd gone digital, but so had I. I memorized the timestamps of her logins, her flight patterns, her preferred IP routing structure. I became a student of their shadows. And the strangest thing happened. I started smiling again. Not because it stopped hurting, it didn't. Not because I forgave her, I never will. But because I understood. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd reprogrammed me. She stripped away the last illusions I'd clung to. About loyalty, about permanence, about love that doesn't ask for a receipt. She taught me to see without filters, to think without sentiment. And what was left, what remained after the collapse, was someone quieter, sharper, unsentimental, still breathing. They thought they buried me, but I wasn't dead. I was redesigned. They took everything except the part of me that builds. The mansion echoed now, not with music or conversation, or the sound of her footsteps gliding across polished stone. Just echoes, the kind that live in the corners of empty spaces. The kind you don't notice until you speak and realize no one is listening. They took everything. Furniture, art, even the rugs. Not out of need, but out of pettiness. She left the master closet door open like a final flourish, a gesture of absence. But the strangest part? I wasn't afraid. The silence didn't haunt me. Cleared something. There's a myth we tell ourselves when we're in love. That trust is enough. That if you give your whole self to someone, they'll carry it gently. But what she taught me, in whispers, in wires, in vanishing acts, was this: empires built on trust can fall. Empires rebuilt on clarity do not. She didn't just betray me, she disassembled me. And in doing so, she showed me exactly where the weak points had been. The open doors, the unlocked safes, the belief that love and loyalty were the same thing. They aren't. Love is a feeling. Loyalty is a decision. And trust? Trust is architecture. Beautiful but fragile. She didn't take my ability to build. She couldn't. It wasn't stored in accounts or vaults or signatures. It was in the quiet. In the part of me that sketches in the dark. That sees blueprints in the bones of failure. That takes a ruin and says, not yet. I didn't want her back. I didn't want revenge. I wanted steel, not in my walls, in my understanding. I wanted to build again, but this time I'd build with eyes wide open. No illusions, no architects who lie in love letters, just a foundation made from what she couldn't steal, me.